recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Classics and Company. This is our wrap-up video for the first book of the year, Moby Dick. And I have here Steve and Anne and Aaron, I'm sorry, this is the second read. The first read was Anna Karenina.
No,
We
that
have
was
Aaron.
last year's.
I'm so confused. It is the first. I was
Yes.
right. Okay. Okay. We have Erin joining us again. She joined us for the Anna Karenina Zoom wrap up. And we have Steve, who did not join us for anything last year, but is joining us for most things this year. So we're very excited
Everything.
about him. And
Everything.
we are going to be
Even
talking
the
about Moby Dick.
crappy books you've picked. I'm still going to join
Yes,
you even for those.
please do. We want you for all of them.
So, for who was it the first read? Erin, was it your first read?
No, this is my second read. I
Nice. Me as
love
well.
Moby Dick. I wasn't going to reread it so soon, but you tempted me too much.
Ah,
And Anne, you
Steve,
and I,
how many times do you figure you have read this book?
I
I
mean, it has
don't
to be
know.
so many.
I first read it in manuscript from Melville.
Oh, really?
He sent you the sheaf, just tied with twine, asked you to proofread it, covered in sea
Yeah.
spray. And Anne, you and I read it. We did a buddy read of this. I
Yeah,
think it
last
was
summer.
last
Yeah.
summer. That was
Yeah.
my first time ever
Yeah, for me
reading
too.
it, and so this was only the second read for me as
Yeah.
And
well.
it's also only my second. I spent
Okay,
years kind of like preparing myself to read this book. I swear I wanted to read it, and I did a whole whaling unit with my kids when they were
oh
young, and
nice.
I got the book out of the library and it sat under my bed for I don't know a year.
There we go.
I read Nathaniel Philbrick's book. I read the
Okay,
Essex book about and then I finally somehow managed to do it a couple of years ago, and it was a wonderful experience when I finally got there.
oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, it was sort of the same thing for me. If I had wanted to read it sooner, and then sort of never actually got the motivation up to read it. But I read Nathaniel Philbrick's In the Heart of the Sea, and I
Yes.
read Owen Chase's account of the Essex, and I think I read it was maybe one or two other books about Moby Dick, but never actually the book itself. And then Anne and I sort of were chatting one day. We were like, neither of us have read this. Let's just buddy read this and get it over with together,
Yeah.
and then
The
loved
Well,
it.
other Philbrick book I found very useful was Nathaniel Philbrick, who wrote In the Heart of the Sea, also wrote a book called Why Read Moby Dick,
Oh, okay.
which is very short,
Hmm.
yeah.
which is also very nice, but it has a lot of background information,
Yeah.
like about, like his motivations in reading the book and like why it's important and what's cool about it.
Yeah.
And also all about his man crush on Hawthorne, which was
Yeah.
kind of amusing.
Oh, there we go. I've seen that book, the title places, but I haven't read it yet. I probably should.
It's a
It
good
sounds
little read.
interesting.
I'm glad I read it. That was kind of another my trying to like gird myself.
Right, right. Get prepared to dive into it.
So
And
my
have
first
you read?
time was in Dutch. It was
Ah,
no, the first time I read it was in English. The second time I read it was in Dutch. I've read two different versions, so two translators.
Interesting.
But in Dutch, it was a real struggle to read the book. It was a real struggle, and in English, I loved it. I truly loved it. But it's also because, especially in Belgium and other countries, I presume in Europe, it is seen as a children's book, while it is not at all,
oh,
at
interesting.
all. And but people mostly read the Geronimo Stilton version or what have you not, and the children's versions of the story. And but it was a real struggle because the words didn't sing as much, and
Hmm.
it it I really was. You could feel that translators struggled to
It's,
Interesting.
read
I was saying on the
to
Discord,
translate the book.
I would imagine reading this language, which is so beautiful and
Yeah,
has so much, there's so many inner poetics in the
yeah,
writing
yeah,
that come out. And like I said, I actually listened to the book twice.
yeah,
I love this narrator, this particular
yeah.
narrator.
Yes.
And it sings, he's saying it, the emphasis and the cadence and
Yeah,
and
that would be hard to capture in translation.
So much alliteration. I was like, how do you capture all the poetics? And I mean, I've heard other people say this about the Russian classics, that we lose all the poetics when it's translated to English. And unfortunately, I'm never going to learn Russian well enough to tackle Tolstoy in the
No,
original.
no.
So we can only imagine through your experience what we've lost. But
yeah, a lot,
but
lot.
I'm glad you were able to access it in the original as well.
Even
Yes.
when I started to reading it out loud, you could feel that the words didn't flow as much as in English. Um, and although they stayed really close to the original, yeah, they really struggled to get the message across, and sometimes the multi-layering of his text. I think it must be a really, really difficult book to translate.
I would not want to tackle it.
No,
I wouldn't.
no.
And the humor. I mean, that's the other thing is that
Oh, that didn't come
so
across
much
at all.
humor in
Oh,
the
really?
book. And I literally, when I'm listening to this in the car, I literally have a grin on my face the entire time. And I even laugh out loud. And I'm like, I don't think it's ever happened to me with any other book.
It's like with Herman Melville, he is really good at building tension, like when Ahab comes into the book, but it takes a whole long while before he is actually in the book. But
Yes.
the
Ahab
announcement
doesn't
of
show
it
up
is
till
so
halfway
beautiful,
through the book.
and
Right.
it doesn't come
Right.
across. And like the first meeting of Ishmael with Queequeg, well, that is so funny.
It's so funny.
It just falls apart. It's very sad, actually.
I'm glad you read it in English the first time.
Yeah.
If
Otherwise,
this
I
had
wouldn't
been
have.
your
I
first
wouldn't
time
have.
reading it, it would have been disastrous.
Yeah,
it would have
I
been
wouldn't have read
disastrous.
it anymore.
The like I said, my one quibble with this narrator that reads this is that the one word he doesn't seem to be able to pronounce is quahog. He says quahog. I'm like, no, it's not quahog, it's quahog.
Right.
Because
I think I listened to the same version you did.
Queequeg sounds, it starts with QUA as well, so maybe he's trying to make a play, but
maybe.
But yeah,
I noticed that as well, Aaron. I was like, you keep saying it wrong, man.
You just keep saying it wrong.
You're so close.
But at least he can pronounce Gunnel. At least he knows how to pronounce Gunnel.
I wonder how your narrator would pronounce Worcester.
Worcester. Well, I think that did
well.
not come up. It's Worcester. Yes, I know, but that does not come up in the book for it. But he can pronounce Gunnel, which is an important thing. He doesn't say gun whale.
Right.
No, I have a question.
Narwhal or narwhale? I never know that either.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
So you've all read this more than once.
Yeah.
But my question is, when you were reading it the first time, what book were you reading? What had this been made into in your mind before you started the book? Was it
interesting,
a gigantic forbidding classic?
For me, yes.
What Moby Dick was it that you started reading?
For me, it was in my mind, it was a long, monotonous, dense read.
Yeah.
And what I read was something filled with humor and drama, and it was completely fluid and was never dull, was never boring. I think the first time I read it in like 5 days. Because
wow, that's incredible.
I just could not put it down
that fast. Yes, but I was mostly in the car. Mostly when I could.
Perfect. There we go.
The car, yes.
But it was the exact opposite of everything that I had thought it would be.
I did attempt this book a number of times. As I said, it was like building up, and I have to say, reading it in text the first few times, I never got past like the first 2 chapters. It is dense, but something about hearing it, where the narrator could give me the beats, and I could hear the humor, and all of a sudden the world just opened up to me, and I was like, wow.
There really is a rhythm to the prose.
There's a rhythm to the prose.
It really is almost musical.
Yeah.
I expected an adventure novel.
Okay.
But boy, did I get more than what I bargained for. But really, it's not really, everybody knows Moby Dick here, but it's not really read. There's no, for instance, in the library where I work, there's no Dutch copy of Moby Dick.
Oh
There's
wow.
none. There's one in English, but that's it. So there are children's copies with Geronimo Stilton, I think it is, but
Just no, Anne, just
otherwise
no.
not. So it's not really a book that's really, yeah, is considered important or interesting. And so, yeah, I was flabbergasted when I discovered the richness and the so many symbolisms in the book, and yeah, the the religious tones often, especially at the beginning, I believe.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the knowledge about whaling and whales and oh, it's amazing. Yeah,
It's also, I mean, it's obviously it's very Shakespearean as well. And
yeah,
what really surprised me the first time I went through it was the fact that like a huge chunk of the book is written like a play with stage directions, enter stage left.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
True,
I was just
true.
like, wow.
Really interesting.
So, uh, was it an alien book as well? Have any of you ever seen a whale on the open ocean?
Well, not for
No.
me. I'm from Massachusetts too. I hang out I go down to New York. Like I said, me and my kids did a huge whaling unit. We read lots of books on whaling. I go down to like go to the tall ships. We sang sea shanties in the car.
There we go. Nice.
Oh, I love the sea
For
shanties.
me,
He even
Steve, it
got the
certainly
tune right.
was.
There's a sea shanty in the book, and the narrator sings it,
Yes.
and I know the tune, and he
There we
sings it
go.
with the right tune. I'm like,
I love it. That's fantastic.
I've never seen a whale in real life. That's for sure.
ah, yeah. Haven't been on one of those whale watching things? I've never
No, no,
seen
no.
a sperm whale. I've seen humpbacks and fin whales.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Have you been out? Have you guys been out on a whale watch?
I never have.
No. How
And I,
about you,
I
Steve?
lived in
There's lots of
Boston
them
for
right out of the
7 years
harbor.
and never went.
Haba.
Steve Steve had one a couple of years back.
I've been out on a sailing vessel
But
by
not
boat.
on a specifically on the whale watch, like out of Gloucester or
I've been
Boston
on whale
Harbor.
watches as well. I found them very annoying.
Why?
Uh,
But did you see any whales?
Because you've been on just legitimate sailing vessels,
I've encountered whales in the ocean,
Ah,
not
okay.
at Wagon Bank, but out out
which is incredible.
where there's no one around, off the shipping lanes and whatnot,
Yeah.
including sperm whales, who can be very curious about a
Yeah.
small
I've never
sailing
seen, I'd love
vessel.
to
They
see a
can be
sperm
very
whale. Never
curious.
seen one of those.
You don't want their curiosity.
No, no. This book
You're
makes
perfectly
that very
fine with the
clear.
curiosity of a baleen whale. You don't want the curiosity of something that has teeth.
No,
But there wasn't anything. Now you have to worry because now killer whales off the coast of Spain are teaching themselves to attack ships. They're teaching each other how to do this. That wasn't true at the time. So when I saw them,
Yeah, yeah.
that's always arresting to me. That probably we don't know for sure, but probably the first living whale that Herman Melville ever saw, he saw up close because he intended to plunge iron into its flesh.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Not a good introduction to anybody.
No,
Every time I think for a minute in this book that like, wow, this character, this whaling guy's character has really elevated language and a deep like knowledge of literature. How realistic is that? I'm like, oh wait, Melville wrote this. He was a whaler. Yep, I guess it is.
right, right.
He went a whaling. That's I think that's one of the things that is talked about in Philbrick's book about why read Moby Dick, about some of his motivations in reading it and how he started it out and how it changed through time. And that was really interesting, and how it went from more of an adventure story and him just also wanting to tell people about what whaling was really like, and then how to
Right.
then, and I think that's why the book has these different layers, that he
Hmm.
wants to tell everybody what whaling is really like, but then
Right.
somehow making it gauging enough that we're not like, lost in the cetacean chapters, or how the blubber comes off the whale in big rolls.
Exactly. And Steve, I know that you often say that in your mind it is two different books. It's Moby
Well,
Dick and the
I think
Whale.
it's
That's
one book that's taken over by another book. I think that
interesting.
Melville is perfectly mirroring his own compositional process, right? Ishmael goes to sea as a happy-go-lucky adventurer, a character who could have walked out of any of Melville's earlier novels. The whole early scenes with in bed with Queequeg, that's all the kind of parlor room acceptable body fun writing that Melville did and that was popular.
Hmm.
And that story is taken over in the exact same way that the Pequod is by this one-legged madman. That story is taken over and suddenly becomes Shakespearean.
It
So I
certainly doesn't
don't
start
know.
out that way.
No, but I don't think it stays two different books. No, because that happy-go-lucky book is doomed. Everyone in
Oh
that book
yeah.
is going to die.
You think it's more another book takes over the initial composition?
Yes, and I think Melville was honest enough to show that that's what happened to him in his compositional work.
Hmm.
I think when you read the beginning of Moby Dick, he didn't want to let those early scenes go, and he shouldn't have because they're wonderful.
Right.
But I think when you read the beginning, you see clearly what this book originally was in Melville's mind.
Yeah.
Another
And then he
money.
took over. Yeah.
So
Well,
Steve, do you
earlier
think
books showed
Melville?
readers the tropical islands. Those earlier books showed them life on board a sailing vessel. Most of the people who were reading his books had no experience of that. He showed them the color and the atmosphere of those things, and he's clearly setting out at the beginning of Moby Dick to do the same thing. And then he can't. Then he can't do that. A bigger story comes into play.
Right. So, Steve, do you think that that was Melville's intention from the beginning to have the shift in tone, or do you think that's something that sort of happened to him?
No, he's fairly clear in his letters that it happened to
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. That's the one of the things the Philbrick book says. It goes very
Oh,
clear.
okay.
That's what was so interesting about reading that. It talks about his process in writing it, where he started, where he ended, all of the
Interesting.
torturous stuff he went through writing it. It was really interesting. I'm sure Steve knows all of this.
Right.
His father-in-law was an infinitely practical man and told him at one point, well, the more I listen to you when we have lunch, always when I'm paying, the more I listen to you, the more I wonder. I forget how Lem Shaw put it. It was something like the commercial viability. He started to wonder about the commercial viability, and this was before he even knew how long the thing was going to be.
Right.
Just,
But
And it didn't do
if
well
I'm
commercially
No,
when it was
no,
first
it
published,
sank
right?
like
It
a rock.
was 100 years.
Yeah.
yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it only became popular after the Second World War. Is that true?
I think that's right
yeah,
in the 20s.
it was literary critics that gave Moby Dick its second gasp at life. just
Yeah.
in just in case the rest of you think that us literary critics are useless parasites on humanity. Every once in a while, we manage to do something
So,
right.
Steve, what was the shift in the literary critics' opinions? Because when it first came out, it was sort of bashed. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
read a really hilarious review of it from
the key
Contemporary
here
Times.
is that the original when Moby Dick originally came out, it was being read by Melville's audience, and they were not in a position to read that from him. Imagine if I don't even know. Imagine uh,
Stephen King?
if Stephen King, if Stephen King took 2 years off and wrote 1,000-page book set in Bourbon, France, all about the ravages that untreated sexually transmitted diseases wreak in the upper classes.
No, I don't want to
And
read that.
a third of it was, well, you wouldn't want to read it, right? Imagine that a third of the
I
book
don't want
was,
to read Stephen King anyway.
imagine that 1/5 of the book was extracts from medical journals about STDs.
Yeah.
Imagine, in other words, if Stephen King took time off and came out with a book that was literally incomprehensible to the audience he had built up.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, the critics, the literary critics also panned it. I read there's somebody, I think when I was reading this, that came across a YouTube video or someplace that had like contemporary, like the New York Times review of Moby Dick by the literary critics, was just like eviscerated the book. Like they did not like it. They
But the
hated
literary
it.
critics were also Melville's readers. He wrote these wonderful, accessible, jovial, atmospheric books that everybody liked.
They were
They
essentially adventure novels.
they
Is
were
that
adventure novels, and they appealed to the clerk in the counting house, who was never going to get to an
Oh,
adventure.
Bartleby the Scrivener, for example. The clerk in the counting house.
there we go?
Where, well, let's hope not as bad as Bartleby. I don't think Bartleby would read Moby Dick, and I think when you
No,
ask him, we know what he would say.
Yeah, exactly. What's his line catchphrase? I'm not being able to place it, Steve.
Well, in the 21st century, it would be nah.
No, but yeah.
I prefer not to. Yeah, I'd prefer not to.
I prefer not to. Yeah, that's it.
Coincidentally, when Anne and Micah approached me for this live stream, my first 10 responses were, I would prefer not to.
I prefer not to.
And they just kept coming.
But I kept hounding you, and you're here now. So it worked. We broke you down.
Yeah, we broke him down.
I just messaged him every 5 minutes.
Once that readership had died off, critics came at Melville, and maybe they read an earlier novel at school or something like that. Then they read Moby Dick and thought, what on earth is this? What on earth is this?
What on earth is it? It's really like no other book.
It's really like no other book. I think the closest that a book comes is another American classic that has not had that critical revival, which is USA by John Dos Passos. I think that's the closest thing to this. And nobody reads USA.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. The critics really tried. In the late 1950s, the critics really tried, but it didn't work.
Interesting.
Maybe that has to do with a movie. maybe that there's no movie of USA. I don't think there could be. But there is a movie of Moby Dick.
Yeah, what marvelous movie with Gregory Peck. I saw it very recently, only a couple of months ago. It is marvelous.
I wanted to watch the newer one with Jean-Luc Picard as Ahab.
The problem there is the casting. The showrunners for that.
Did you seen that one? The only person I know in that one is
Oh, that's not true. You also know Ishmael. Ishmael is a grown.
But no, I do. I may if I watched it, but I haven't seen it. So the only one I know off the top of my head is
Ishmael in the movie is the grown up of the boy who was in E.T. So everyone in the world has seen him.
Oh, yes.
but the showrunners for that movie obviously thought Patrick Stewart, Ahab, because Patrick Stewart is such a resonant presence.
He's a Shakespearean actor. He seems like he would be great.
Shakespearean actor, but Shakespearean actors can't do everything. It would be a English director who would cast Patrick Stewart as Lear. And the same reason is why that TV show version of Moby Dick fails. Patrick Stewart can't do irrational. No. He can't do crazy.
Yeah, he doesn't. His face is also too perfect.
No, he also has a British accent, and well, let's face it, Ahab's from Nantucket, man. Yeah,
you can't cast an incredibly rational actor as an incredibly insane character. It doesn't work.
I don't know. Have you seen him do Macbeth or
That's true, Aaron.
Macbeth's not insane. He couldn't do Lear.
That's true. It's his wife. Well, he goes insane by the end, kind of.
And it kills me because that thing had a budget. It had a special effects budget. If someone else had been cast as Ahab, I think it's an unwatchable mess. But if it need not have been. If someone else had been cast as Ahab.
If I want to go watch a movie of it, which I have not yet ever done, I should go watch Gregory Peck, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, it's a brilliant movie.
You broke Steve's mind.
Moby Dick.
I have not seen a movie version of Moby Dick. Nope. I've just listened to Ishmael tell me stuff. I'm telling you, the audio for me is like, Ishmael, just tell me stuff. Just keep telling me stuff. I enjoy having you tell me stuff.
When that Patrick Stewart movie was being cast, I was hoping that they would. I knew that
I meant to watch it. I just didn't.
I wanted them to cast somebody who can do crazy, somebody who you don't know what they're going to do. I thought that one name that was going around was Robbie Coltrane. I thought that would have been perfect, but
don't know him.
It never did happen, unfortunately. But the original Moby Dick movie,
yeah,
that's the good one.
Okay,
that's the good one.
Noted.
It is.
I will skip Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
I mean, the poor man. He plays a Nantucketer. He plays a Frenchman. He still has a British accent, right?
Poor guy, so confused.
Down to the tiniest little details. There are tiny little details in the John Ford in the in the Houston Moby Dick. There are tiny little details that are all just
it's really, really, really good.
And you said you watched it very recently?
Oh yeah, a couple of months back. It's on Prime.
Oh, awesome!
Amazon Prime. You can watch it. Yeah.
and with no special effects at all, virtually none.
No, but it's not needed.
No,
There's,
no,
there's
no.
a scene, the first scene where the boat's lower and they're after Moby Dick and Ahab is out with his crew.
Yeah.
You see water with birds darting over it. And the reason why that scene works is simply because the director puts a camera on a bobbing boat. So you are looking at the water as if you were looking at the water. Seems like a simple thing, but 9 out of 10 directors wouldn't thought to do it.
Right.
And it makes you feel the terror of the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just little details like that.
But I'm very happy in this chat. I'm very happy that when I asked any of you if you had ever seen whales in the ocean, none of you asked me if I'd ever been whaling. It's very nice. I am, after all, a sultry 28-year-old.
Exactly. We didn't want to bring up any of the horrors of your past.
When you meet one of these beings in the ocean,
Yeah.
the idea that someone would
Kill that.
kill them,
Yeah.
it's a reminder of how unbelievably barbaric it was. And that was something Melville didn't see. He didn't see that completely. He was, at least that way, a man of his time. But when he was whaling, they would haul out whale carcasses and living calves would fall out of the mother's womb onto the deck.
Yeah. It's brutal.
And whales from that pod would stick around.
Yeah.
And the crew members on board would, and it isn't just Melville, I think Owen Chase mentions the same thing, that the tenor of their calls changed. Yeah, I would think the tenor of their calls would change.
Right, because someone just got slaughtered from their family.
They didn't make the connection. The connection that I would say we make today, except that there are nations today that still hunt whales.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, we don't need to start down that path.
And I believe is it Iceland or Greenland who wants to start whaling again? It's one of those countries that want to start whaling again. Come on.
Yeah. And in other times, in earlier decades, the International Whaling Commission, the provisions would have had teeth. Well, we have this prohibition. It's been in force for decades. If you want to broach it when you are a signing member, well, you won't have any trade deals with our country anymore. So will that work? Will that compensate for the amount that you will harvest from these animals that science now knows are communal and sentient and cultural? Science now knows that you're committing murder when you do this. Will it be worth it to you to lose us as a trading partner? But no one's paying much attention to that with Russia invading countries in Europe.
No,
right.
that is
being overshadowed.
Completely off poor whales.
Yeah, but a lot of politicians don't want to fall out of a window somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or die under mysterious circumstances in a Siberian penal colony.
Yeah. Who would die there? How is that possible?
Exactly.
There was that interesting chapter where Melville is in complete denial about what they were doing to the whale fisheries as far as their longevity, where he just goes, yeah, we're killing them off, and we kill this many per ship per year, but the ocean is a big place, and it's an unreplenishable resource, and we'll never run out.
In denial
like,
completely.
Dude, no.
And he wasn't the only one. People at the time said, if we keep doing this, there won't be any more. People said that about baleen whales. They said that about buffalo.
Yep.
Passenger pigeons. They said that about everything.
He mentions the pigeons and the buffalo, and he's like, oh, but in comparison, we're not killing that many whale versus the 40,000 buffalo they killed. I'm like, yeah, but maybe there aren't as many whales as there were buffaloes on the prairie.
Right.
Just because the oceans are big doesn't mean there's this
infinite supply.
Can I ask another question? I promise there's no moral judgment involved in this question. But so I'm dealing with a total of 6 reads of Moby Dick, 2 each, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How many of those 6 were involved turning pages and reading words?
Both
for you.
Yes,
both of mine.
I listened to the audio both times.
Mine.
I have a copy of the book right here. I bought it. I had to buy it, so I have it as reference.
That's a deluxe edition. Oh my! Look at the back of your Penguin Classic deluxe.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's one of the great moments.
We got Queequeg here.
In the
Now
Gregory
we got
Peck
Ishmael.
Moby Dick, that's one of the great moments is that we see Moby Dick's eye.
The eye go by.
Yeah.
Close up on the whale's eye. But
And
we don't you don't get that in Melville. The
Mm-mm.
hallmark of a really good literary adaptation is that you'll get grace notes that aren't in the book.
Right. Right.
Same thing with Ahab. Ahab makes his appearance in Moby Dick after 3 dozen chapters, but
Yeah.
in the movie we glimpse him hag-legging his way down the street in the rain. We don't meet him, but we see him, and it
Interesting.
actually works as a visual foreshadowing. It actually works.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we got the crazy prophet in the book to give us some foreshadowing of Ahab instead.
Indeed.
So
I read it both times, Steve. The second time I listened along with the audiobook for certain chapters, but I would also be reading the others. I would listen to the audiobook when I was in the car, and then when I would be at home, I would be reading the physical
Now,
book.
did you use my beloved Hootkins or some other
Yes,
person?
I listened to the version you listened to. He's fantastic.
Okay.
and Anne, have you ever listened to it on audio?
I tried, but it wasn't for me.
I've never been able to
You
do it.
don't do audiobooks
because
very
I
often, do
find
you?
it really hard to focus. And I don't, when I'm driving, I prefer to listen to music, no, not to focus on a text. So I prefer to read it, to take the book and actually read it.
Right.
For some reason, this focused me better. Like when I was reading the book the first couple of times, I kind of
You're
got
wandering.
lost in all the words. And when I listened to it, it was like a laser shining, like,
Interesting.
here it is. Here's the book.
But
Right.
maybe like if I would take a train like to my father's, where I'm on the train for 1 hour and a half in one go, then maybe it would be a whole lot better. But not, my car journeys are always very short.
Yeah.
And 15 minutes, 10 minutes, that's not long enough to get into the
No.
rhythm of the book.
It is for me. I also have 15-minute car rides. I'll do 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
Right.
well,
we all have
leave my
different
couch.
methods
we all
of
have different.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I
It's
don't go
good that there's
anywhere.
many
Yeah. You
paths
don't.
up the mountain.
He goes to the Brattle and back.
I go to the Brattle and back, and that's it.
And on walks.
And I can't use the audiobooks on the way to the Brattle because a drunk will ask me, "What are you listening to?"
I don't like to listen to audio when I'm walking. I like
Right.
to be aware of my
Of
surroundings.
what's going on around you.
Yeah.
It's
Imagine
advisable.
Aaron walking.
Yeah,
and
no,
with,
no, no.
some sirens behind
Also,
her. And,
and in Belgium,
truck.
also biking. No
Oh.
audio while biking. That seems like another bad idea.
Yeah, that's a really bad idea. Yeah.
Can I ask another dorky question?
Of course.
Here at the end of your recent rereads, what is, I don't want to ask something as dumb as what was your favorite part, but what was in this reread, what was the part that sang to you the most, that you're thinking about now after this latest reread? Did anything jump out that didn't jump out the first time? Or did you find yourself enjoying something a lot more this time, where you didn't enjoy the same thing as much last time?
I'm thinking.
I'm thinking too. I enjoyed it so much the first time. How could I enjoy it more?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the general. I'm talking about specific pieces.
I was more paying attention to all the side characters now because there was time. Because you know how the story goes, so you have more time to invest in. For me, it was Queequeg, and see how interesting of a figure he was, and yeah, I could invest more time to him, and yeah, that was really fun because he's so interesting, and with his coffin and everything,
Changes too.
he was
from
going to die, and then he
very
didn't.
somber.
That was another emphasis foreshadowing. Like we got the coffin that got made into the life buoy that ends up saving his life. That all that kind of like, foreshadowing ish going on.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed this time that I didn't just notice last time is that there's a bunch of references to Ishmael kind of like looking back in the story as a storyteller, talking about future whaling trips he made. And I'm like, so Ishmael did not stop a whaling. He went back and did more whaling. And I'm like, wow, after that first journey, would I go back and do more whaling? I don't know, but apparently he did.
That is
I had
interesting.
a student once who said the second time that he read the book, all he could think about was Starbuck.
Wow, interesting.
That's really interesting. That's great. And
He's an interesting character.
yeah, he is. He's
His plea for his family there at the end was really heartfelt.
Yeah, true.
Of course,
Yeah.
that same student came to me next time and said, "Yeah, I like him so much, I want to write a novel from his perspective." And I said, "Don't do that. That's not a good idea."
I thought you were going to say, I want to start a coffee store with the name.
Yeah.
That's been done.
Oh, that's funny, Steve.
What about you, Micah? Did you notice the porn more this time? The pornographic?
I would say I agree. I agree with Anne a little bit. The first time I read it, I was obviously focusing on Ishmael and Ahab and sort of the general flow of the story. And the second time around, when you know the plot, you know what's going to happen. It lets you sort of remove yourself from the major moments of the novel and focus more on the small details. Not so much on the other characters as sort of descriptions of set pieces, descriptions of sort of the characters' interactions, even removed from the dialogue, and then focusing a little bit more on Queequeg as well. I find his obviously the beginning is just is hilarious. It's just the humor is on point, but just being able to not be so worried about keeping up with the story because I know it's going to happen and focus on just those little interactions that happen throughout.
There are a lot of little interactions.
With books like this, I often wonder about that exact anxiety. I don't quite know how to deal with it other than spoilers, which the 21st century has developed this weird monomaniacal fixation on.
Right.
Monomaniacal.
Yeah.
The pressure that you just described of, I basically don't know what I should be paying attention to. How much of this is going to be important? This is so much.
Right.
I wonder that, I mean, that pressure is there in any big famous novel. War and Peace, people feel it a million times.
Yes.
And the way to diffuse it is to tell people what is going to be important and what isn't. But the 21st century absolutely doesn't want to do that.
Right.
They absolutely nothing
that
I
just let myself be carried by the story even the first time. I mean, maybe because I did. I mean, I think we all know that Moby Dick and Ahab are not going to survive the end of the story. What else is there to know?
Oh,
Do you know what I thought of?
Moby Dick is the only he survives.
You know what I thought of? I thought of Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. There's that guy who constantly is rereading Robinson Crusoe, and I was thinking I'm a bit like that guy now constantly rereading
going back
Moby Dick.
I forgot about that in the Moonstone.
I always worry about it with big, multi-layered, complex books. I always worry that first-time readers are going to look at this and say, "Okay, well, you're giving me 6 pages of cetology. Do I need to know this? Why are you doing this?"
Ishmael tells me stuff. It's all good.
Maybe the audiobook is the way around it. Maybe that.
It is. I'm telling you, it was
just hearing facts.
And because he says, even in the cetology chapter, there's humor. I'm going to say that the whale is a fish. I've decided we're good.
Right.
Yes, it's always the shocker
it's
to
a fish.
Modern sensibilities. Never, when you say to them 2 things, that the author of Moby Dick went to his grave believing that whales were fish, and Clara Barton went to her grave not believing that germs exist. You say those 2 things, and nobody believes it. They don't want to believe those 2 things at all.
But he says that at the same time he completely acknowledges that the whale is a mammal. I mean, he knows that, and he talks about them having lungs like a thing. It's just like he's just decided that, you know, his overarching concept of what a fish is in complete opposition to what the scientists say a fish is. As a fisherman, it's obviously a fish.
This was anyway, a fact.
I also found that chapter to be told with a lot of humor, honestly.
Well known to the Dutch. The Dutch were extremely familiar with whales that washed up on shore.
Yeah, true.
And
Yeah.
it was a Dutch intellectual who went. They used to be viewing parties. People would go down to the shore and
Still,
just, it was a tourist.
still,
You would go down and look.
Really?
still.
Yeah.
If there's a couple of years ago there was a a sperm whale that was washed on the shore, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I believe there was one day that 100,000 people came to watch it.
Wow.
See,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that that would be allowed anymore because a whale carcass can build up dangerous pockets of gas. And
Oh
if
yeah, they can
someone takes
Oh
explode.
yeah, 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 yeah.
one moron poking it, someone could
Yeah,
seriously
but
get.
you can't. They just made a perimeter around it so people could watch it, but not touch
But
it.
not touch
Outside the
it.
blast zone.
Imagine.
Right outside the blast zone.
And blah.
Right.
Centuries before
There
Melville
have
wrote
been
this
many
book,
exploding whale carcasses. It's not a thing you want to be near.
long before Melville wrote this book, a Dutch intellectual went down with one of those parties to look at a whale that had been stranded and that had been rended. People had started to tear it open
Yeah.
to look inside it, just for curiosity. And this Dutchman looked at it and said, "This is an enormous dog." And this was at a time when everyone in the world thought they were fish. He looked inside it, and he had already seen, unfortunately, the inside of his own dog, and said, "This is an enormous dog." So yeah, it must have been obvious to Melville.
Oh no, he even talks about how they have like 5 fingers in their flukes. I mean, he talks about all of that. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of it, I think, that's still kind of tongue in cheek, even in that chapter. Do you know what I mean? His tongue is often firmly planted in his cheek. It's one of the
I would agree.
That won't be easy knowledge if we have any young Earth creationists among us.
no.
Good that we don't.
It's just Micah. It's only Micah.
Just Micah, yes.
And the flatter.
Yeah. It's a flat earther.
Very
Micah was born a snake handler and he'll die a snake handler. You automatically wonder if
thankfully I've run far away.
if we learn
So
in the
Anne, do you know
Bible,
if the Dutch kings and the Belgian kings, do they also have the thing where the whale was theirs? Remember that part of the book where the kings have the divine right to all the whales? My whale.
Oh no. We only have a king since 1830. So no,
No.
we don't in Belgium we aren't whalers. So no.
Well, no, it was just the ones that washed up on the beach. If you caught it out in the open ocean, you could keep the whale, but any whale that washed up on the beach, the kings had the right to take it. It was theirs.
Oh
Because
no.
the whale was such an
Unlike all
awesome
others.
creation, it was obviously theirs.
Unlike most other salvage, most other salvage,
Yeah,
the
all the good stuff belongs to the king. Come on.
No, it was science. Here it's science.
Yeah.
that was also an attitude in Tudor times.
Yeah, no, that goes way back though.
The
That
whale swam up the Thames in Tudor
Yeah.
times.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it was in the
A
books.
whale aborted in the Thames for days on end. And the Tudor king at the time insisted that his counselors agree with him that the whale was in his domain and was therefore his subject.
That's right.
And one of those counselors said, removed out of the antique language, said, "Well, how about you give it a command?" He didn't stay on the council.
See what happens then.
He was booted off the council.
Tell it to go away.
Moby, fetch.
Right. Throw something.
When it comes to Moby Dick, another awkward question, if I may. I might as well shoot all these awkward questions off since they guarantee I won't be back. but so what about the next encounter with Moby Dick? I'm assuming that all of you who have read now read this book twice. I'm assuming that the thought in your mind when you finished was, "I'm certainly going to encounter this book again."
I think
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I bought the book and it's the full intention of reading it in print the next time. But then I was like, I was lulled. I was the siren song of came to me.
So what about you then? When you think about encountering this book again, is it going to be audio?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And if it's audio, will it be the same audio or
For
someone
me,
else?
it would be the same audio. This in spite of the mispronunciation of Quahog, I will have to forgive him because he gives a real performance. Like I said, he hits all the beats Do you know what I mean? I've heard I think I listened to other narrations, like on the audio samples, and I was like, a bad narration can kill it.
Yeah.
Micah, and what about you?
I'll definitely be reading it again.
Yeah, me
Absolutely.
too.
And probably
Will you wait for it to call to you? Will you wait to give yourself a couple of years to digest it?
I
Yeah.
I probably would. Yes.
Yeah.
Just to give myself time to fully process it all. And then enough time to then sort of wait for it to grab me again.
Yeah, yeah. I had not planned on rereading it as soon as I did. It was only 2 or 3 years ago that I read it for the first time. But yeah, you guys it's like candy.
There we
Yeah.
go. It works.
Catnip.
And
That's how we are.
how about you, Anne?
Yeah, I will read it again, but I will give it at least 5 years now. So
You would read it in English next time?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe if there's a new Dutch translation that comes out, because translations are getting better and better and better here, and yeah. But
Interesting. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you
that's
wait
one of the
5 years, that's
Translation
enough
you read
time for.
old, and
hmm?
when is the translation you read from? Because I found a lot of times the translators in like the 19th century were a lot less. They were kind of more like, we're just going to translate the books into the words and then they'll sell. And I know a lot of 19th century Russian and French novels that were translated into English are now being retranslated, and the old ones are pretty much being told to, take a hike.
Right.
No, 2009 and 2012.
Oh,
So
wow.
quite
Oh, that's pretty
recent.
recent. Yeah.
That's one of the only there aren't many positive developments in the publishing world, but one of them is what everybody thought 30 years ago was just an inherent resistance of any reading audience to read translated literature. Turns out that was never real. That was
No.
never true. Translated literature is hungrily being consumed by every reading public in every language. That's great. That's only to the benefit of all of us.
Yeah.
Right.
You can compare it with foreign language movies. You either like them or not, but there's
Right.
an audience for them.
Well, Netflix is certainly helping a lot. I mean, the
Yeah.
number of Americans that are now addicted to K-dramas. Who would
Right.
have thought?
Right. Absolutely.
I am not among them, but it's everywhere, man.
I saw that whole row on Netflix and I asked myself one simple question. Are they any worse than American movies? And then I watched 3 or 4 of them with the subtitles on and came to the easy conclusion. No,
Oh,
most
yes.
movies are crap. Most movies are absolutely terrible, including Korean movies.
Yeah.
Just-
Movies in general.
Well, K-dramas are basically soaps, and I just am not a soap person, so I
No,
can't.
me neither.
I can't.
No,
No.
me neither. No.
None of you were ever fans of soap operas?
No, I'm
No.
allergic.
Oh, my.
Oh, so Steve is a soap
I was
opera
about to say-
fan?
Oh, yes.
I knew Steve was a soap opera fan.
Lover.
Once
Which
upon
one?
a time, yes, but not anymore. Now,
Which ones were you enamored of?
Days of Our Lives, of course.
Ah, yes.
Everybody else in the country, like everybody else in the country.
That's still running, isn't it?
No.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah,
still
yeah.
running.
They never die.
That's what I was thinking. It's still going.
They never die. In fact, the same characters that were in them 30, 40 years ago are still there doing the same thing.
Just new actors portraying them.
A lot of times with the same actors, I just don't understand it.
It's just like watching someone's life for 30 years. Like, it's not going to be that interesting.
Well, except they keep having evil twins and dying and coming back to life.
The characters
and,
always come back to life.
Oh my God.
I saw
Man.
one plot twist where he was a character eons ago. None of you will know this story at all. He was a little bit controversial as a soap opera character because there was an open question about whether or not he'd raped someone. So he was being played as an anti-hero. So you could root for him, but you couldn't trust him. And at one point, he's captured by the bad guys. He's entwined from head to toe in thick baling wax. He's carried to a big stone sarcophagus. They lay him inside. They slide the 500-pound lid over it. They leave the tomb and they blow up the entrance. And 5 episodes later, he shows up in a cafe. What? Okay, but how did you get out of that? No one could get out of that.
No,
Reality is not important in such things.
No.
it is not. Only drama.
Only drama.
That's amazing.
The only thing I've been able to watch that's soap adjacent is Jane the Virgin, which is basically a giant takedown
There we go.
of that whole it's making fun of it the whole time.
Right.
That was fun.
Right. It's very like self-aware of itself.
I can't do it anymore. I have completely refined my life for reading. So
Good.
the idea of sitting and watching something, as addictive as it is, it's just
Not worth it.
it can be on in the background. And if it's on in the background, if it grabs me, well, then I'll drop what I'm doing and watch it. If it happens to be Godzilla -1 or Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is my new obsession. But otherwise, no. In Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, there will never be a point anywhere in that movie where you think you are not looking at actual gorillas and orangutans.
Wow.
That's how good the CGI is, which is not true in even the earlier Planet of the Apes movies. You will look at this and think, I am looking at a gorilla.
Wow.
And you're not. You're absolutely not. You're looking
certainly not in the original with the makeup.
No. Oh, God, it's a world different. It really is weird in a way. I mean, I love it, but it's also weird in a way because Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes proves that anything can be real. Now, visually, anything can be, which is weird. Although I watched it again last night and I had the same thought that struck me the first time, which is that whether humans are involved or apes are in charge, horses are still getting a raw deal. Everyone is still whipping horses.
Oh my God.
When do we get Planet of the Horses? When does that?
When do they get a break?
Yeah.
Well, they get a break in Gulliver's Travels. The final part of Gulliver's Travels where Gulliver meets the Winhams, who are not only the most advanced and enlightened race he's ever met by far, but who don't even have a word for a lie. They don't even know what the concept is. And he loves them. Lemuel Gulliver loves them so much that, of course, they cast him out because what are you? You're some sort of weird primate. You're homicidal. You're genocidal. You lie all the time. We don't want you around. When they kick him out, he's so enamored with them that he starts to live with his own horses in his estate, who are not Winham. But we won't be getting to Gulliver's Travels on Classics and Company in due time.
Yes. Oh, yes. That
maybe,
was
maybe 2025.
Yeah, 2025. Yeah.
I
Together with
Germinal.
Germinal is also on the list for 2025. So we have to round this up because Micah has to do something.
No, we can't wait that long for Zola. I want to read Zola with you people.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do it the first of 2025. It'll be the first read, maybe.
Yeah. What's next for 2024?
Next is Middlemarch.
Middlemarch, yeah.
We are now reading Middlemarch, and after that, it's Les Miserables.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. I thought
no scoffing, Steve. You're not allowed to scoff at our choices.
Well, I thought for a minute there that this was going to be Classics and Company according to Steve, because you were reading Moby Dick and then Middlemarch. But finally,
we dropped off. We dropped off of Steve's approval.
I've never read Les Miserables in the original. I've only read it twice in an English translation, and I hated it both times. So that'll be spicier. Middlemarch, I don't. Middlemarch is just like Moby Dick. I have no idea how many times I've read it.
It's really good.
There is no bottom.
Really good.
How much I love it. How much I love what's going on in it. Just
we're excited for that one. We can include you on that Zoom call as well, Steve.
You can I don't know if you want to do that. I've been nothing but tedious.
It's together with Kim of Middle of the Book March.
It would be fun. It would be fun.
The Middlemarch
one. The three of you, have you read Middlemarch?
No. For me, it's a first.
First time.
I'm not going to be on that call because I'm not going to reread it. I need to read some new things. You keep tempting me with Candy. I'm going to skip Middlemarch. I've already read it. I loved it.
You need to break free from the Classics and Company mold.
I reread Anna Karenina too. That would be the third one in a row that I reread. I said I wasn't going to reread the stuff. I was just going to participate, and you guys keep sucking me in with really good choices.
well, thank you so much for joining us for this one, though, Aaron.
I don't know what you're going to
joining us for this.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're going to make of it.
I'm excited.
Middlemarch is really good.
It will either work on you, or you'll get 500 pages in and say, I don't know what is going on here. I know what's going on.
Book, for sure.
Why does anyone like this? You'll either get to 500 pages and say what many critics at the time said, which is that there's never been a book like this, or you'll get to 500 pages and say this is like staring at a rock. Why would I do this?
I was worried because I was not that big a fan of Silas Marner.
No.
I've read Silas Marner twice. It's short. You think, oh, that's a nice short little introduction. I was like, eh. And then, but Middlemarch is glorious.
No, if you come to George Eliot's body of work, you will almost certainly come to it through either Silas Marner or Adam or Ethan Frome.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
Ethan
neither one is anything like Middlemarch. You read those two things and think,
Ethan
oh my
Frome
God.
yeah, Edith Wharton, yeah. But Ethan
Well,
Frome.
right. Oh, sorry. I meant Mill on the Floss.
Yeah,
You come to one of those two and you'll think, this is agony. why would I read this at 900 pages? But
exactly. But it's not. Fortunately, it's not. It's something entirely different. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all.
Thank you for watching, everybody. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you will join us for the next one when we discuss Middlemarch. And I hope to see you soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.